And we are back, everyone. Episode 16 of the Jader and Kyle show. We've been moving on forward here, guys, trying to keep busy every single week. Jader, it's been a long week, man. How you doing?
It's been long,
Yeah?
but I'm doing good, man. I've been doing good. Yeah, I'm tired. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm very tired, but I'm very excited, very excited. Talking today's film, which we will introduce in a bit. But yeah, man, long week. Lots of reading I've been doing, and seeing a lot of films. But
Yeah.
but yeah, man, it's Friday. I'm happy. I have a well-deserved whiskey
Mm.
going on over here, and ready to roll, dude. I gave up because I figured that since we were on 16, I wouldn't be able to
Yeah,
do
you can't
the
do the fingers
episode.
anymore. It
So
doesn't
I
work.
couldn't do the figures. I'll see you again on episode 20, sir.
Yeah, it was actually a shorter week for us though because we had our last recording on Sunday, so here we are Friday, and we're just a heads up next week, guys. We're gonna be doing it on Thursday, so just be ready. But this week we have a very special guest coming on, someone that we've been excited to have on. I told Jader, like, reach out, let's see what happens, see if we can get him, and lo and behold, we're here. Mr. William Bibbiani, what's up?
Hey,
Yeah, how you doing,
hey everybody.
man?
Hey, it's good to be here.
The
Thank
beast
you,
is
thank you.
here. Bibiani, man, we've been such huge fans of you here on the Jader and Kyle show.
Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Respected your work, not just as a Showdown competitor, but also as a film critic. I listening to your podcast like crazy all the time, man.
Thank you.
I remember the first time you and Whitney came on to the Schmoes No Show, and that's when I really discovered you guys, and I've been with you guys ever since. So, like, whenever, because we do the film criticism here in Florida, you know, we go to press screenings and we write for a website. We do all this stuff down here. So, like, to be able to hear your opinion every week is something that I look forward to.
Well, thank you for that. I will say this. The fans of the Schmoes and this whole community has been just absolutely wonderful and accepting. And yeah, I know there have been problems, you know, sometimes, but for the most part, like, everyone has been super duper great to everybody. And it's been really helpful, you know, to people who are trying to find, you know, people in the film industry, critics, voices, pundits, fans, and we might not have connected otherwise, and isn't that nice? So I'm grateful to them, and I'm happy to be here. And growl.
Growl.
Growl, Jader. We all haven't done a classic film yet on this show, and it's just been because that's what other people have chosen. They haven't really gotten into it. But William, you're a huge fan of classic films.
Sure.
During this quarantine, I've used this time to really go back deep and make a run of classic films, and this was actually one of them I did about 2 or 3 months ago. I've seen it before, but I really wanted to go back and see it again. What is it about classic horror that really stands out to you?
That's an interesting question. I think classic horror is, in terms of film and cinema, it's interesting because for many years in Hollywood in particular, there were extreme limitations on what could or could not be filmed. They could do movies about various topics, but sometimes they couldn't say the topic out loud, or they couldn't show violence, or even they couldn't even speak about the elephants in the room. So there was a lot of emphasis on simultaneously subtlety, in which a lot of things that nowadays we would discuss very directly in films like, I don't know, you know, Hereditary or Midsommar, or all of these like really emotionally intense films that are violent and angry and speak to, you know, some of the, you know, darkest recesses of the human mind. You couldn't really say that out loud, so you had to find other ways to do it. And what would happen is oftentimes the actual subject of the film would be somewhat downplayed. But in order to combat that, in order to compensate for that, oftentimes these films would be incredibly stylized. And so you would have films like, you know, the James Whale Frankenstein movies, or Daughter of Dracula, or there are these movies that have like a lot going on, like right under the surface. But on the surface, they're just these entertaining, theatrical, often very gorgeous horror movies. But horror in this sort of Grand Guignol kind of, yes, let's throw some shadows over there and a cobweb over there.
Yeah.
And I love all of that. And that's a really wonderful way of doing horror movies. And a lot of people made horror movies in a variety of different ways all throughout the classic era. But it wasn't until the film that we're talking about today came out that really lifted the barriers on what was acceptable in a horror movie and what we could discuss openly in any movie in some regards.
Right.
And all of a sudden, we have the Motion Picture Association of America now, but the production code, which was a system of self-censorship that Hollywood forced upon itself so that the government wouldn't come in and censor them legally. Right. All of a sudden, that was kind of exposed for being a whole lot of. Can I swear on this on the show?
Of course, yeah,
absolutely.
It was exposed for being a lot of pointless bullshit. So that right there, this movie right here, is this incredible sort of paradigm shift, and it's about 2 hours long, and in that 2 hours, you can see all of mainstream Hollywood change. Yes. And sort of in an irreparable way. Things are broken, things are fixed, good decisions are made, bad decisions are made. But this movie that we're talking about this week is one of the most important films ever made in any regard. And I still think it holds up as a really ripping thriller. Parts of it are subtle and understated. Parts of it are incredibly extreme and blunt. And I really do love it for all of that.
Well, we'll get into the film in just like a couple minutes, but for right now, I also want to ask you about what's going on in the industry. Just yesterday, we had so many films get pushed back. Stuff all the way from Spider-Man, the Top Gun, the Quiet Place 2, and I mean, it just feels like at this point, I don't know if we're going to see a new movie in theaters until at least we get a vaccine or cases are gone. Yeah. I don't know at this point. Here in Florida, they opened back up theaters for about a couple weeks. I'd say about 2 weeks. Yeah. And I went into one, and it was just me by myself, hand sanitizer everywhere, mask everywhere. I got to see a movie I never got to see on big screen, and Saving Private Ryan. So it was a really good experience. But then they
was it literally just you in the theater?
Yes, it was just me in the theater.
There you go. It's cool you got to see Saving Private Ryan, but I mean, there's two possibilities in this situation. One, they fill that theater up to as much capacity as possible, and then it becomes, dangerous. Who's to say who's leaving their mask on in the dark? In a temperature-controlled environment, they're saying that that's actually really conducive to spreading the virus in a room where the air is recirculating. So we don't want it that big. But if we're only getting a couple of people in a theater, it's not worth staying open because you're paying everyone's salaries at that point. You're paying to rent the movies, and frankly, we're at a point now where unless there's a miracle vaccine and we somehow speed through the human trials, which you can't really do.
You can't do,
You really can't do it. We were incredible. The best case scenario for movie theaters was everyone in America stayed home whenever possible, wore their masks constantly, and none of that got politicized, and it just... we just flattened that curve. Well, it did, and that's my point. Yeah. It's like we kind of screwed ourselves over. Not everyone, of course, is directly responsible for it, but as a country, we couldn't get behind everything that was necessary in order to modestly reopen. So there are a lot of places that are opening up and closing back down. And movie theaters, there is really not a lot of incentive for any studio to put any major film out in theaters. And I'm sure we're going to see more smaller scale films arriving on video on demand, getting sold off to Netflix or Amazon. That's fine. That's definitely part of the process. But for movies like, James Bond and Black Widow, these are movies that cost hundreds of millions of dollars. They were spending hundreds of millions on marketing, and the only way to make their money back is to get a theatrical distribution and try to get $1 billion. Even if you come close, that's what you need. Yeah. They're not going to want to put that on a streaming service because that's not going to benefit them. They're not going to make their money back off of that. So we'll probably see more of the modest films. And in the meantime, I think there actually is a positive in that there are a lot of smaller films, independent films, lower budgeted films that are getting released every single week. We've had new releases every single week since the pandemic started, and quite a few. They're on different streaming services. They're in different video on demand services.
There were those big weekends that happened. Like I remember just a few weeks ago that there was a Tom Hanks movie, and it was Greyhound and Palm Springs, and
that was a good weekend. Those are good movies. Those
Exactly.
were, especially Palm Springs. That movie's amazing, but those are films that honestly probably would have gotten swallowed up by the summer season. Greyhound is good, but it probably couldn't like last multiple weekends and make a lot of money when all these superhero movies were out. And Palm Springs might have done okay, but it's just a small Groundhog Day kind of rom-com, and it's actually smarter than that, but it was not the kind of film that was going to really grab people's attention and get people talking for a whole week, because the way the industry works is we have built everything around these tentpole franchises, and those franchises come out often enough that whenever a Marvel movie comes out, you know that you are destined, for better or worse, to get 2 to 3 weeks of conversation about here's what we learned, and oh no, we have to re-rank all the Marvel movies now. And that's all of that's very fun. All of that is very fun. But when that's all you talk about all year, and you talk about the same 20 franchises over and over again, it doesn't leave a lot of room for anything else to find an audience, or anything else to build buzz, for anything to sort of change the way the industry works. So as bad as it is that the industry has collapsed, there is the potential right now that this complete change in how we interact with our entertainment could change things a little bit for the better and give us an opportunity to let other types of films find an audience, get made more, highlight different filmmakers, and maybe sort of wean people off of this constant deluge of like weaponized anticipation, where you need to constantly talk about what you just saw or what's coming up next, rather than find something that is, to actually see, Yeah.
And well, something that I've noticed too, I've been thinking about this the past couple of weeks, and we kind of talked about it, Jader, is our country is doing really bad with this virus, but a lot of these countries aren't. So I've always wondered why does the rest of the world have to suffer lose these out on these new releases because of us? So now you can see things like Warner Brothers is discussing with Tenet right now that they might start releasing it across the world and markets that are doing really good. And just so it gets out there, they start making money. And maybe that's like a wake-up call for our country to say, hey, maybe we need to, to get this thing going so we can see this movie. I don't know. Jader, like, what do you feel about this?
Agreed. Same thing. Kind of. We kind of been touching on this subject for like multiple episodes already, because it's like this is the latest scoop or whatever. But the same thing. I as bad as I want to see Tenet, and I was all gun ho about it, but seeing how Miami or South Florida, where I'm from, is like considered the new Wuhan now. Yeah, how crazy. No one wants to stay home down here. Tenet can wait. As bad as I want to see it, I don't feel like I need to go out to the movie and expose myself. So I agree 100% with them releasing it out there. Maybe is a wake up call for us, or for the industry, or for just people that want to. Movie fans. There's plenty of movie fans out there, especially when it comes to a Nolan film. Bibbs, you were talking about how all these franchises and your Marvels and your I guess we can include DC, any superhero film, or your Fast and Furious, as people run to the theater to see. There's plenty of there's plenty of films. I'm sorry, I'm like tangling my words, but Nolan being one of those people. I feel people. Nolan puts butts in seats. Right?
I think he's a franchise unto himself. Whether he's making a franchise film or doing an original, there are a lot of people who will see literally anything that Christopher Nolan directs it. He's at that point right now, and
agreed
for him. But I'm of the opinion. Listen, I want to see Tenet too. Of course, I want to see everything. And I prefer to see it in theaters, but we're getting to a point where they're going to have to make some calls. They either hold off on it, or, as you said, they might have to release some things overseas in theaters. And I've heard people complain about that. And, again, maybe I'm just old, but I remember back when they used to release movies in America, and people overseas would consistently, it still sometimes happens, but consistently not get those movies for multiple weeks. That was just sort of the standard. It was a staggered release. And indeed, before like Jaws came out, a staggered release of a film was the norm. We didn't have films taking up hundreds and thousands of theaters all at once. They would show them in certain markets, and then if they did well, they would expand them. And so the idea that, oh no, we're changing the wide release formula is not the craziest thing in the world. And I think there are some people who are being a little reactionary about it. I understand we all want to see it. And I think the biggest reason why a studio might not want to release a movie overseas right now is the concern about piracy, is that the film might be pirated and come to America and people would see it on their laptops or their phones or whatever. And listen, that's a very real risk.
Yeah.
Let's just be fair. There's no great answer to this. The great answer to this is everyone stayed at home and wore their masks, and then maybe we could have had such low transmission rates that we could go to a movie theater and feel somewhat safe. But we're not there. We screwed that up. There is no chance we're getting to that anytime soon. So we have a couple of options. Either they release things on VOD in America and overseas in theaters. That's a possibility for a lot of films. That might mitigate some disasters if the movies don't cost like way too much. They could release them overseas and then eventually maybe getting around to showing them in America in theaters. But again, that's complicated and weird. They can just completely wait. And a lot of movie studios are very content to let their tentpole movies wait.
Yeah. Well, I mean, indefinitely, I think we had cancellations. I mean, what they're not releasing in theater was Tenet, Mulan.
Yep.
And I think you mentioned the smaller films, which one of them is coming on VOD, which is Bill and Ted 3.
Yeah. Is that VOD now?
Yeah. So
it's
that's
officially VOD now?
It's officially going to come out.
Select theaters September 1st and everywhere on video on demand on September 1st as well.
Oh, I missed that one. Okay.
That was just announced yesterday. Yeah.
Well, I am excited to see that movie. It does look funny, and I like the whole cast. So I hope. Yeah, what are you going to do, right? It's a bad year, and we're all just scrambling to make it work. So
yeah, no,
I'll be the first to see that movie. I'll be watching it at midnight as soon as it drops. I want to.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I've been itching to go to the theater, man. I miss it so much because I just love the whole experience. I haven't been able to see Palm Springs. I did see Greyhound over the weekend though. On accident.
Jader, do you want to tell Bibbs what your favorite movie of the year is so far?
Bad Boys for Life.
See, so Bibiani, I just listened to the recent critic.
Oh yeah, I did. I finally got around to Bad Boys for Life. I missed it in January, and I'm like, oh, it came out in January. I'll have plenty of time to see it, and of course I do. And I finally got around to watching it last week. That movie has aged so fast. In the last 6 months, that is a completely different viewing experience. That went from being like, oh yeah, it's cool when cops like break the rules in order to get the bad guys, and now we're just like, it's never been cool when cops broke the rules. Actually, why have we ever been fine with this?
I understand that completely, man. Yeah, no, it's actually an ongoing joke. It's a joke that I have on the show. Because we haven't had that many movies coming in the theater, so I'm considering theater releases only.
Yeah.
Come on, man, you're missing out on things like for me, if Hamilton doesn't count, which I think it does, but if it doesn't count,
I think it does. It's great.
But if we want to have that conversation, I think The Five Bloods from Spike Lee is probably the best film of the year. That one, I think that was the first big weekend when we had King of Staten Island also.
King of Staten Island and that, yeah.
I missed King of Staten Island. The Five Bloods is fucking phenomenal. It's really good. I don't think that we can go by conventional standards of we can only count. I don't think we should ever only count movies that go into theaters. I think that's something that gets decided for the sake of narrowing down what can be nominated for certain awards. For me, if it's a movie, it's a movie.
Yeah.
And we try to cover straight to video and TV movies and stuff whenever we can on our podcast. And so I think that probably the best film I saw theatrically this year was Birds of Prey, and I think the best film I've seen and streaming was The Five Bloods. And of course, those are very different movies, and comparing them is rather difficult.
Yeah.
But so deciding which one is better may be a fool's errand. But I did love them both. Hamilton, I think, is definitely a movie. It doesn't apparently qualify for the Academy Awards for a variety of weird rules reasons.
Makes no sense to me. There's cuts in it. There's different takes. Yeah.
Which could be irrelevant. I think there are rules because there was some TV type performance or whatever that might have got nominated once, so they changed it, and so we didn't just I don't know. It's odd, and I don't particularly care for it. But at the very least, it is definitely a movie, and I think it should qualify for the Showdown. We'll see how that works. And then probably the other really great like theatrical film I saw this year was The Invisible Man.
Yeah.
It's
That
really
for
good.
me, honestly it got better with. I've seen it 3 times already.
Yeah.
And it's gotten better with every watch. So the first time I saw it, I really enjoyed it, but I didn't think it was like anything groundbreaking or anything. The second time around, I ended up loving it so much more. And then the third time, I was like, man, this movie's awesome.
I think it's an instant classic. I really do.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
I'm curious though, because since I don't get to talk to you guys very often, I'm very curious. Is there anything you've seen this year that you really loved that didn't get the hype that the movies that we're talking about right now? Because Invisible Man was a big release, Hamilton was big, new Spike Lee movie. Like, what is there anything out you've been able to see that maybe went like kind of under some radars that you loved?
I got 2.
Okay.
One is The High Note, which is a movie that really
I heard that was good. Yeah.
I think that's like this was in the middle of the quarantine when this came out, and this was a really feel-good movie that I feel like Tracy Ellis Ross and Dakota Johnson just brought it, and then Kelvin Harrison Jr. is also a really good up-and-coming actor. So that's one that I feel like really got overlooked because it was the weekend right before the Five Bloods and everything, so people were really overlooking it. So that's one I really appreciated, and then The Vast of Night on Amazon Prime.
That movie's fantastic, isn't it?
Oh my gosh.
I loved that. That was a wonderful discovery.
It's a great experience.
How many festivals turned that down? I do not get it. Like, it's ridiculous when you look at all the festivals that didn't want that movie. That movie is great. Legitimately great.
And that director really has a bright future ahead of him.
I think so.
If I was listening to an interview with him, and there's just how many things they made happen because they had such a low budget that they just had to keep adjusting, and they found all this old equipment at antique shops across Texas. It's just really fascinating how that movie works. So, Jader, you got any?
Yeah, actually, I mean, they're kind of bigger movies. They actually went to theater. But I love The Hunt. I feel like a lot of people did not. Really
I had a lot of fun.
I had fun.
I get why people didn't like it. It's a very mean movie, like across the board, and it it sort of finds humanity like hilarious in a mean-spirited way, which I don't think everyone's in the mood for. But
and that's
really
the thing.
good stuff in that movie.
It was just very bad timing for this movie to drop. It was really in the middle of everything. But I thought it was a lot of fun. And actually, I'm gonna follow with Five Bloods. Obviously, is probably my favorite of the year, all joking aside, with Bad Boys for Life. But King of Staten Island was another one that I felt had the hype for the weekend, but every person that I've asked if they've seen it, they haven't. And I understand one of the reasons why, and it all depends, because I don't mind dropping the money for a movie that I want to see, you know?
Yeah.
A lot of people are like, dude, it was like $20 to rent. I'm not renting a movie for $20. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I get it. You know, and I understood.
I feel like that price point for new movies that they're not like streaming movies. They're trying to actually make you pay for them so they can get their money back for films like, I don't know, like King of Staten Island or whatever. But like that price point is actually very, very key. And I think it's one of the reasons why we've been seeing more family films released in that format, because if you're going with a spouse and like 2 kids and you have to pay for parking and you get some popcorn, a trip to the movie theater can be anywhere from like $70 to $100. So $20.
Trust me, I live that.
Yeah, exactly. $20 to stay at home and watch Scoob.
Yeah.
Would you have to say that with an exclamation point? Like, that's a good deal. But for a movie that you might see just by yourself or with one other person, that might not seem like a good deal. And that's kind of a weird thing that we might have to work out.
What I told my buddy it was worth King of Staten Island. It was worth it. So I'm like, hey, just split it 10 and 10 with somebody else, man. Just, you know, do a little pull when you walk in. But I ended up buying Trolls World Tour because my daughter loved the first one.
Still haven't seen that one. Yeah,
it's cute.
Yeah, it's cute.
Fine. I like it fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
The music for me was what makes those movies, and I'm a big rock and classic rock fan. So seeing all those songs in that film for me made it just, you know, it always gives that extra push for me. So
I appreciate the effort that they went to make like the actual environments in the Trolls movies feel like handmade, like they're made out of felt, or like if you punch the floor too much, you would actually hit like the actual like plywood underneath the carpet where they're playing a game with trolls or whatever like that. I think that's a really, really nice aesthetic. Those are better movies than I think people give them credit for. They're cute.
Yeah.
William, one more topic I want to get to you about. Which you brought it up, the Showdown.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. We actually had the Barbarian on last week, and he's
a nice guy.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Craig was really fun to have on. But he is in the same draw as you and Whitney.
Oh no.
You got a tough draw, man. First, you're gonna have to play James White or someone else, but if you move on, you got a tough second round right there.
I as near as I can tell, like there are a couple of people who, may find themselves overmatched in round one or whatever like that. But who can say? Honestly, it's a Showdown. Anything can happen. But it's considering how many players are in the singles tournament this year. I was kind of hoping to have like an easy run because last year I had Chance Ellison and I had Ethan Irwin and I had Roca, I think, and it was just one giant competitor after another. And I mean, look, if whoever, because I'm playing someone who wins a play-in match, so it's either James White or Frank Moran, and whoever wins that is going to be like battle hardened and like have some like momentum going with them. I haven't played a match outside from an exhibition match since January.
Yeah.
So I'm taking that very, very seriously, even though I'm not playing someone who, I'm a former champion. Like there's that, but I'm taking that very, very seriously because a tournament is a great opportunity for someone to steamroll through former champions and make a name for themselves. So you got to take everyone seriously. And then, if I'm lucky enough or skilled enough to beat Moran or White, I end up playing either Barbarian, who scares me, or Whitney Seibold, who knows me inside and out. Like there is.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how does that feel, knowing how close you guys are, and he can just, that's scary to me.
Yeah, he knows what I'm bad at. I also know what he's bad at. So like we've been making podcasts together consistently over like thousands of hours maybe for about a decade now. So we know each other real well. I actually think ultimately that's why, although we did really good as a team, why ultimately I think we weren't the perfect team. It's because we'd kind of equalized a bit and a lot of our strengths were the same. And I think I'm a little stronger with the kid, and I think he has the potential to be stronger with Alonso. And I'm really looking forward to their teams match. It's going to be a really exciting match. I got to take him seriously. The reason why I brought him into the Showdown
Drew,
because I believe go Drews. Thank you very much. But
barely a team right now.
But in any case, like whoever I face in round one, I'm gonna be studying my butt off, really taking it seriously. And if I'm lucky enough to make it to round two, it's gonna be nothing but heavy hitters the entire way. Because Barbarian or Whitney's singles, what do you call them? Ranking. I think it's like 0-2.
So the worst luck
is a fluke. It's a fluke. Yeah. We all know how smart he is. Yeah. He had two kind of bad matches, and it killed his momentum, and it's rough. And I honestly think that there is a very real chance, as amazing as the Barbarian is, that Whitney could completely clean his clock. So we will see how that goes. I'm looking forward to singles play. I'm hoping I can rack up as many points as many points with the Quirky Mercs as I can. And I really want to win the singles one this year. So we will see how it goes.
Well, that's the thing, is anyone who takes this tournament is going to, if they're a legend already, it's just going to elevate them. And if they're not known, it's going to make them a legend. Like you with the free-for-all, like you standing there for however long it was, you were already a star, but it puts you into that upper stratosphere.
I'm not convinced I was a star before then. I think I had some notoriety, but I was still like considered this person who clearly knew stuff, but was like, had really bad luck. And even the free-for-all, I ended up not winning it. So, but what I did end up doing there was kind of hard to deny. And I think that's been good for my cred. So yeah. And when you look at it, like, I think the first singles tournament I entered, I lost in the first round, and that sucked, but I lost to Sam Levine, who ended up going on one of the best winning streaks we've ever had. So you never know what narrative you're actually a part of and whose narrative it is. So this could be my year to finally like make it all the way to the end of the singles tournament, solidify a legacy, or this could be the year when Frank Moran does like 8 perfect matches in a row and we all suddenly live in a universe where Frank Moran is the god of the Schmodown. That's possible too. Or for James White or Whitney Seibold or the Kid or whoever. We don't even know if Dan Murrell's going to be in the singles tournament yet. If Dan Murrell's in the singles tournament, we're all like, oh, crap. Oh, that's not good. That's not good for anybody.
It's more like, when do I have to play him, not if.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've played him twice in singles, and he has beaten me both times. One was close.
Yeah.
We actually had the same percentage of accuracy, but yeah. I got one of these days I'm going to beat that guy. Very.
No, I remember your debut match. You blew me away, man. I was like, this guy is a force to be reckoned with. But I have to say that my favorite big moment ever is Free for All, man. You wowed me that day. That it was so mind blowing to you and the Kid.
He was great. He was really good.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
I was looking forward to Free for All. I actually had a number this year. I was going to fly out and be there.
We were so close. Free for All had been like 2 weeks earlier. We would have been fine.
I shot my match March 7th. I was coming back home and then flying the weekend after for Free for All, and it literally ripped me apart because I was so ready to be part of that. Just to sit down. I don't care if I lasted or not. Just to sit down in front of everybody and say I was part of the Free for All.
The live Free for All was a wonderful experience, and I hope every Schmodown competitor gets to go through that because, I mean, look, I lasted a long time, but whether you do or you don't, it's the wild crowd and the fanfare, and anything can happen, and you get to interact with a whole bunch of people in the Schmodown. Like even under the best circumstances, you typically only play in singles 3 to 5 matches a year if you're lucky, which is really not that many. So like all things considered, and sometimes less, sometimes you only get 1 or 2. And at Free for All, you get 4 at a time. And then if you last a couple of rounds, you get to like actually play with and interact with so many cool personalities and brilliant people. And that was my favorite part, was getting to like play and beat most of the people in the Schmodown. So that was cool. Yeah.
So,
man.
Like when you got that number 1, were you excited or were you devastated?
I was pissed. I was like, come on, man. I was mad in like the previous year when I had like number 21 or 22 or 23 or something.
So I mean, it doesn't matter now because we're not doing it, but I had number 26. I thought I had a great number.
That's a good number.
Yeah, I thought I had a great number.
It's not the best number. The best number is like 40 or whatever the hell the last one is. But like, that's what I was hoping for. I was like, can I maybe have a pick out of the hat again, maybe, or no? And I was like, oh, this sucks. Yeah, I was really, really furious. But it actually motivated me. I remember driving there on the way, and I had decided to myself mid-drive, you know what? I'm going to break this thing. I'm going to break it. I'm going to go from number 1 all the way to the end. Let's see someone take me down today. And if I lose, I lose. It could happen at any moment in time. But I was like, I could have just let it be intimidating and then thrown up my hands and go, whatever. But I really decided to try and set like a record that no one could beat. And unless someone actually goes from number 1 or anyone in the first round, I guess, all the way to the end and wins, there's no way they can beat it. So, and I hope that could be me someday. Like, who knows? Maybe next time I'll get number 2. That'll suck. That would I actually don't want that. No, I don't want that. That would suck. No,
whenever there's a free for all, you're already the betting favorite every single year now, just because of those 2 performances back to back.
And yet I've never won. Whatever. Anyway,
you're MVP forever in my book, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So let's move on to our big discussion here. So, William, we asked you like, hey, just, give us some films that you really would love to go into detail and talk about. And you decided to go with some classic horror, which we talked about earlier. Some of your options that you put out were something like Cat People and The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari and Invisible Man. I forget the other one that you talked about.
I think it was just those 4, wasn't it? Or
no, Psycho and The Tingler. I think.
Oh, The Tingler. That was
yeah, those are the other ones.
But I remember seeing that list, and I told Jader, I'm like, these are all really good films, but there's only one that's going to win if you put it on a poll for people to vote on.
Yeah, Psycho was maybe a gimme. I didn't want to alienate people by only putting stuff out there that maybe like the younger people or people who are only just getting into cinema haven't seen yet. So I figured Psycho was kind of a safe bet. But the thing with Psycho is that it's actually like really, it still plays really well. Like it still like feels like kind of, what's the word I'm looking for here? Feels
relevant.
Kind of, it's relevant, but it also feels kind of rebellious. Like you can tell that the people making it were just like, we're going to be violent and sexy. And I think that's something that I think horror has always been kind of at the forefront on, like dealing with issues like, you know, sex and death and mental health issues and issues of social class. And there are so many things that are just difficult to talk about that you can kind of only talk about sometimes in a more fictionalized environment, or at the very least only talk about it in a way that gets people like eager to have that discussion. And horror is a really, really great way to talk about that, because a lot of the things that we don't talk about in society are the things that we're afraid of.
Yeah.
So here's Psycho, just confronting all of that, and some ways better than others. And the legacy of Psycho isn't all good, but fascinating to watch.
Sorry, guys.
Dog agrees with me, and that's great.
It feels like this is almost like the template before the big slasher movement happened. It feels like this was like people saw this and got the idea for it, and then they really went full out. Because I remember people like to consider Halloween to be the first slasher film. I know Black Christmas came out before that, and the original one, and that one could be considered. But this is, to me, Psycho feels like people saw this and well, maybe we can make something happen with tonight. Jader, I'm gonna mute you for a sec, man. All right, good.
That's actually tracking the actual genesis of the slasher genre as we know it is actually a little complicated, because you know, it's nice to pin everything on one movie, but that's not entirely accurate.
Yeah.
A lot of the movies you said are often considered one of, if not the first slashers. I think Halloween was the film that officially put all the pieces together so cleanly that other people could rip it off really easily and still make a successful / good movie.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Halloween, you can't deny. Black Christmas was an undeniable influence on Halloween. Funnily enough, there's actually another Christmas horror movie, a slasher movie starring Sally Field, that nobody talks about. It was written by the screenwriter of Psycho, that has all of the slasher elements in it, and nobody discusses it. Like I think it's the first movie, earliest movie I've seen to play it like Psycho. It's called Home for the Holidays.
For the Holidays, yes. It's a TV movie, right?
It is, and it's a pretty good TV movie, all things considered. It's a really good cast, obviously. Sally Field and a bunch of other people you probably know. And so that it's pretty easy to track down online if you want to look at the early genesis of the slasher. And then, of course, throughout the 60s and 70s, we had the Italian giallo genre, which is very Hitchcockian but more violent, sort of detective / serial killer stories made by folks like Mario Bava and Lucio Fulci and Dario Argento. And that led to the creation of the slasher. And in 1960, we had probably the two films that were absolutely instrumental to creating the slasher as we know it. One, of course, is Psycho, and the other one, which technically beat it to theaters by a couple of months, is a really amazing British proto-slasher called Peeping Tom, about a guy who he's not only killing people, he's killing people with a camera tripod. He's sharpened the legs, and what he's doing is, as he's killing people, he is filming their death.
Oh wow!
It's really creepy.
Not been remade.
It's really creepy.
I've heard of the film. I've heard of
it's so good,
Tom, but I've never seen it.
It's so good. You should totally watch it. It's super creepy. It's very much about the way that like we fetishize violence in cinema, and it's very confrontational. It's very cool, and it's interesting that Peeping Tom and Psycho were obviously concurrent films, and Psycho, of course, doesn't come from out of nowhere. Hitchcock was very much inspired by
the novel, right?
Well, the novel, of course, and of course the real-life serial killer Ed Gein, who inspired the novel. But also cinematically, Psycho is very much a gimmick film in a lot of ways. There was a whole thing about how they wouldn't let people enter the theater after the movie began. That was not common operating practice.
So I have that in my notes. Yeah. One of the things that I had written down was that the marketing was incredible. Hitchcock's trailer Hitchcock's trailer did not show a single scene from the film.
Yep.
He just showed his locations, and he was talking about background of the film.
My pick for the best trailer of all time.
Yeah, and then theaters were under strict rules. No one was admitted. If they were running late. It's kind of like how obviously the Russos grabbed it from this. The whole no spoilers. He begged audiences not to spoil the ending of the film.
One of the interesting details I have in here is on the first day of shooting, he made everyone raise their right hand and swear not to reveal any details about this film outside of production, and he even held the ending until they actually had to film it. That's how secret he was of it.
No, in fact, how secretive was Alfred Hitchcock about this film? He read the book, and then he bought up every copy he could find, like all over the world, just so that people could guess what the twist was.
That's fantastic.
That's a hell of a thing to do.
That's fantastic.
And it's really crazy. So the idea of a movie whose plot was that secret was quite novel. There had been twist endings before, including in stuff like The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. There was an ending of a horror movie called The Bad Seed, which I think came out before Psycho, which wasn't so much a twist, but they did have like a screen at the end asking audiences to promise not to reveal how it ends to anybody because they deserve to see it for themselves. But I think the films that most set the stage for Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho were actually Les Diaboliques, which is a really amazing French thriller about two women who scheme to kill an abusive husband. That's got a great twist in it, an amazing scene. And it's my understanding that Hitchcock wanted to have that impact on people. But also, one of the more influential and interesting filmmakers who people don't talk about enough is William Castle. William Castle was a low-budget independent filmmaker. He also produced films in the studio system as well. He produced Rosemary's Baby. But he made a lot of low-budget horror movies, and what he did was he would use these big eye-catching gimmicks in an attempt to sort of raise excitement for films that might not otherwise have them. And so some of them would be really simple, like here's a cardboard axe that you can bring into the theater, and isn't that fun wearing an axe? But there were also gimmicks like the Tingler. It's one of the reasons why I want to talk about that one, because I thought that was a cool idea. The Tingler is about a monster that latches onto the human spine, and if it tries to kill you, and you feel like a tingle, I don't know, the only way to get it to stop clinging to your spine is to scream at the top of your lungs. Very contrived concept. There is a scene in the movie where the Tingler, which looks like a big giant centipede.
I'm sorry to interrupt. William Castle is the director of House on Haunted Hill, right? The original.
He directed House on Haunted Hill, directed the original 13 Ghosts. 13 Ghosts is better than the remake. House on Haunted Hill, not so much. But yeah, so there was a scene in this movie where the Tingler, the monster, escapes into a movie theater. And then the lights in the theater go out. And Vincent Price, who's starring in the movie, yells, "Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a drill. The Tingler is loose in the theater." And the theaters were retrofitted, or outfitted, I guess is probably the more accurate term, with buzzers in random seats.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So you're sitting there, and all of a sudden, the Tingler is on your back,
That's so great. Exactly, that's what I was going to say. The level of showmanship for him to go as far as that, to do that. That's incredible. Yeah, we need things like that now.
I think so. I think it's easy to get complacent. I think it's one of the things that when you look at the films that become huge hits, not the ones that are obviously going to be huge hits because everyone's going to see them, like James Bond, but the films that sort of surprise you by becoming huge hits, like
Get Out.
Paranormal Activity is another good example. They are all feel like must-see movie experiences. Like everyone is talking about this. We have to go.
Right.
That's all you really need to have a hit movie. Is you need to have a movie where, for one reason or another, preferably because it's just that good, but for whatever you got, feels like a must-see. There's absolutely no way I'm missing this thing everyone is talking about.
And I mean, we can get into the Alfred Hitchcock of it all, too. Sure. Have you ever seen a 4-movie stretch as impressive as this? You go from 1958 to 63. You got Vertigo, North by Northwest, Psycho, and The Birds, all back to back to back to back. Did I skip one?
Before that, actually? I think the stretch is even crazier when you really start digging into the weeds. But yeah, that's an amazing stretch. That is, and it's weird because Vertigo was not popular when it came out.
No.
No,
oh, really?
People did not care for it. It was seen as arty and weird. And frankly, if you knew anything about Alfred Hitchcock, it's just kind of all about his personal creepiness, and it's not that fun. But yeah, it was not a hit. It was not a hit.
I love Vertigo.
I appreciate Vertigo.
Yeah.
It's not my favorite, but I get
me neither.
I get why it's so beloved. And I think he was, and after doing something like North by Northwest, which is a huge blockbuster smash hit, he wanted to do something totally different. He felt like he had got kind of in a rut. And so here's this mean-spirited, violent, sexual, kinky, creepy, low-budget film that he's making with people who are not huge stars. Like, people knew who Anthony Perkins was. He was kind of a teen heartthrob. But these were not big stars when Hitchcock was working with them. So this is like this little experiment. It's like when Steven Soderbergh shoots a movie like in his apartment and all of a sudden it comes out in a week. Like that's kind of what Psycho was. It's this huge. It's like, imagine a Christopher Nolan. Okay, he does Tenet. Maybe Tenet's the most amazing movie ever. Maybe it's not. And then his next movie, he decides to shoot for $500,000 with actors you've never heard of.
Yeah. He would never do that.
And then it becomes one of the most important movies ever made.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. But yeah, it's funny. It's crazy because I obviously much younger. I didn't even and I didn't start getting into film. I mean, I've always been a film buff, but I mean, I've since I remember at least, you know. But I didn't start hitting the classics until I probably got it until my first semester in college, right? And the only reason why I even knew about Psycho was because of the ending of Scream when they mentioned it, you know. And I was like, what the hell is that? This was an influence for this guy, for Billy Loomis, the character, and I was like, I gotta check that out.
He's got a creepy relationship with his mom.
Exactly. So I went back and I saw that the movie was black and white and was immediately like turned off. And I was like, I don't want to see this shit. Yeah. Again, I didn't appreciate like
have that stigma. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's just weird for me because I personally didn't. My parents were very, very big on making sure that I was like watching classic cinema the way I was watching anything else. So I grew up with a lot of these classic movies when I was really young, and I'm always a little surprised at how difficult it can be to get some people like to finally like latch onto the aesthetics, like the idea of just being turned off because something is in black and white. Is something that I don't know. It's weird that that's hard, and yet it is. It's funny.
It's always been a thing, and I don't understand it either. But like once you convince them with a film that's black and white, they usually get turned on from there, and then there's no going back. Funny enough, none of those 4 films are my favorite Hitchcock. We can all answer this question right now. Like, what's your favorite Hitchcock? Mine is one that came out before that, is Strangers on a Train. I told Jader about this last week. Strangers on a Train, I feel like is a very fun movie that has a great premise to it at the beginning. Just like, hey, let's just have a conversation on a train. I don't like my wife. Oh, I don't like my dad. Wouldn't it be cool if we killed each other's people? Yeah, let's do that. It's just kind of a joke. And then he leaves the train, and then the guy shows up later. Hey, I killed your wife. When are you going to kill my dad?
Terrifying.
It's super scary stuff. And it's fantastic. Mine is a toss-up between this one and Rear Window. Those are my 2 favorite Hitchcock films. I love them both. And I'd probably give, just because of my whole and they're both, I love horror, obviously. But I want to give the edge to Psycho because it really did. And this is where I was going with the whole I didn't want to see it. And when I finally saw it, even knowing the ending, right? I was still doubting. I'm like, did I hear the ending right? Was I wrong? What I thought the whole time I'm like, I thought, I mean, we're gonna have to spoil that out of this movie, but the whole time I'm like, I thought he was the killer, but it looks like it's the mom the whole time, not knowing what the real ending was, right?
Yeah, they do a really good job of obfuscating that.
Fantastic. And I was telling Kyle before you jumped on, Bibbs, I haven't seen this movie in maybe 2 years, about 2 years. It's been a little while. But it's such a treat for me every time I see this film. And I just, from beginning to end, I just have the biggest smile on my face because it's so good for me. I love this film. And one of the things was I felt bad. I legitimately was like, this guy, when I thought everything that was going on, I'm like, this guy is traumatized by his mom, like he's on a leash or something. And he's unlike any killer we've ever seen before. At least the serial killers that I was, again, Scream was my introduction to horror, even though I had seen horror. No, so I have seen horror beforehand, but my love for horror grew when I saw the first Scream movie in theater. I was in elementary school when that movie came out, and I snuck into the theater. Yeah, I know. I know.
My dad took me to see Predator when I was 4. Okay, it's fine. It's just that's a hell of a formative experience. I'm actually envious of you. That's really cool.
Oh, there you go. So I snuck in. I remember that they took me to see That Darn Cat with Dougie Doug and Christina Ricci, right? It was the remake, right? And I was sitting in that theater, and I'm like, this movie blows. I was 96. I was 10 years old, right? And I'm watching, and I'm like, I'm getting out of here. I got up, and I told my aunt, I was with my aunt and my cousin. I'm like, I'm gonna go see another movie. My aunt was like, all right, whatever. Like, it was like cool because I'm a dad now. I was like, no, you're not. Sit your butt down. You're not moving from this theater. But back then, it was like, yeah, go ahead. So I went and I saw Scream, and I saw the time that it was starting, and I sit down and I'm watching this film, and I see Drew Barrymore on screen, which I have seen on screen before, and we get that masterful beginning of a film. Of an introduction. This all relates back to it, where I think you get your Hitchcock influences from Wes Craven, taking such a star character like star actress, like Drew Barrymore, and killing her in the first 5 minutes. Psycho does it in the first hour of the film, where you kill the main character, which was a whole
shocking. Hour. And have you ever read the book Psycho?
No, I have not.
It's a page turner. It's fantastic, but she's dead within a couple of chapters. Like, it is not like Hitchcock stretches that whole section out as long as he possibly can, and I think that's what makes it so effective. Like, it's not just, oh, what a big star, I'm surprised that they died. He gets you really invested in the story of this woman that has nothing to do with the murderer. It's all to do with she's desperate and lonely and doesn't feel like she has a future, and she can't like be with the person she loves because he's in so much financial debt, and so here's this opportunity to steal some money, but oh no, I'm addled with guilt, and that's a perfectly good setup for any movie. And we're really invested in it, and we're really super. And when she dies, it's as much as a surprise, I think, to the film. And I think that's what makes it great, is because you're halfway through the movie and you're totally invested in this plot with the money, and all of a sudden we just ran into a different movie.
It doesn't matter. And I love that about that film.
It does not matter. You can see in the second half, like, a whole bunch of people are still trying to like find out about this money, and it's like, no, we are beyond the money does not matter anymore. But they still have, like, they're talking to Norman Bates like, so I bet you could do a lot with $40,000. Norman doesn't even know what the hell they're talking about.
Like, what? Yeah,
what
that's
going on?
And even at the very end of the film, where they're like, what about the $40,000? Oh, that's probably in the pit. Like it did not matter. And that's one thing that I love. And that's one of the similarities I've seen between, and that's probably my love for this film, was that it reminds me, again, there's certain beats that Scream has, which is with Anthony Perkins. You said he was a heartthrob back then. When you see him, he is, he's handsome, he's charming, he's very talkative, which usually with killers, you see it's the opposite. They're very quiet, introverted. Scream has Billy Loomis, where it's the exact same thing, where he's a good-looking guy. He's popular. He has, the girlfriend and all that. So you have those certain beats, and then which I love, is where the mention of, when he has the knife to his hand, he goes, Anthony Perkins, Psycho. And then once I finally got to see once I got over the whole black and white thing, I was like, this is genius.
Anthony Perkins' performance in Psycho is completely masterful, because it's interesting, because he's not actually doesn't have like that confident, cool kid at school swagger. He has that sort of shy, I want to take care of him kind of vibe. And you can see that like Marion Crane really takes a shine to this poor guy and feels bad that he's in this terrible relationship with his mom. But when after you know what happens in this movie, whether you've had it ruined for you before, you're watching it for the first time, and what a tremendous gift it would be to be able to watch Psycho without knowing what happens. You see that Perkins is doing really subtle things all throughout the film that tell you everything about him. When he is talking to Marion Crane in his office, and there are all those birds looming over them like raptors, when she starts suggesting that, oh, maybe you could put your mom someplace, and you can see in
immediately
that he doesn't snap, but what he does is he very quickly turns into mom. And he even starts taking on more feminine sort of physical flourishes. There's an incredible shot in Psycho that I don't think people realize until they watch it multiple times most of the time, in where Norman's about to go upstairs in his house and go talk to his mother. And it's just Hitchcock lingers. It's just a low-angle shot of him walking up the staircase, and you can see at the start when he walks up the staircase, he is walking like Norman, and at the top he's walking like Mom. And if you don't know to look for it, you might miss it.
Wow,
it's an incredibly subtle piece of acting throughout the entire film.
Fantastic. That's fantastic, man.
I mean, all right. Let's get into these categories here then, because that's really going to be able to break it down a lot more. So let's start with the number one, best scene. I feel like when you look at on the surface of it, there is an obvious nominee for best scene, and that would be the shower scene, obviously, because that's one of the most iconic scenes in cinema history. People talk about it all the time. But
I was scared to shower after I saw that for the first time when I was a kid.
It's not even the stabbing. What gets me is him sneaking in, and you see him through the shower curtain, and like there's nothing you can do. There's nowhere you can run if you're in that shower. You're just backed up against the wall, naked and wet. Go ahead.
I think that's one of the scary things that horror movies can do, is to sort of make you realize just how vulnerable a human being can be. I think Jaws did that for Beaches, and I think now all of a sudden there's the idea of watching someone shower, especially like with the camera inside the shower, is something that Hollywood just wouldn't even consider. This was the first American movie to ever show a toilet flush.
Toilet flush. Yep,
that's
absolutely.
A very weird thing. Like that was not something that was allowed for a long time, and they had to construct a reason to even show that, and they had to like make it part of the plot with her like flushing the evidence down the toilet. So the whole idea of a bathroom as a place that you are vulnerable and you could be attacked is something that had not really been addressed at all in cinema to speak of. And here is Psycho all of a sudden making a bathroom the most terrifying place in the world.
Yeah,
so
that's incredible.
Is that your pick, Bibbs? Because I mean, it's
not, and I think it's because as brilliant as that scene is, and it is, and it's a perfectly valid choice. My actual pick is the scene I was just telling you about with Norman and Mary Crane, and they're talking to each other, and it's the point in the film where the two movies, Norman's movie and Marion's movie, intersect. And they accidentally become part of each other's narratives, where Marion suddenly realizes that, much like Norman in his situation, she had felt trapped where she was, and she may have made a bad decision. And now that she has met this kind young man and in his sad little life, she realizes that her own life wasn't so bad, and that it's not too late to make amends, and everything's gonna and then you've got Norman Bates, who we find out later in the film that he has killed before multiple times, but here's a situation where he is just minding his own business, and then someone comes in here and triggers a lot of baggage for him, where he has issues with his mom, issues with institutions. He speaks about mental institutions as though he has personal knowledge of them, and it seems to have been just making him relive all this kinds of trauma. We see him quickly turn into Norma Bates and then back again. But it's all incredibly subtle, and if you don't know to look for it, you might not notice it the first time. And so this scene is kind of everything in the whole movie. It's everything. It's the first half. It's the second half. It's the nightmares. It's the humanity. It is everything all in one, and I think it's a masterful piece of acting from everybody involved. So that's my pick, because I think that's a bit more subtle. Although, obviously, the shower scene is intended to be very extreme, and I think it is very effective at being extreme, and it is one of the great scenes in movie history as well.
Jader, what's your pick?
Actually, my pick is, I have two. Right, okay. Shower scene is not actually one of them. Mother's reveal, where Vera Miles turns her around, and you see that for me is impacting every single time that I've seen this film. It's so great. And again, it, as much as I already had the ending spoiled for me, I had my self-doubts as I'm watching this film, because that's how I feel how masterful Perkins was, and Hitchcock with writing this character, right?
Well, Joseph Stefano technically wrote the script, so credit to that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, so credit Joseph Stefano. But I also, and it's a scene that apparently I have had a couple friends that are film buffs that when we talked this film, they hate it for some reason, and it's the ending with Dr. Fred Richmond. I love the review. I know it kind of like dumbs down the audience when they're explaining what Norman did and how he was both mother and himself. But I just love that explanation so much. I love that scene so much because it's kind of like, wow, I can only imagine watching this movie in the 60s when it first came out and being like, oh my God, this is he's a psychopath.
That's a really tough scene, I think, to explain to modern audiences why I still argue I don't think the scene is necessarily as well handled as it could be, but why that scene was necessary. Like, the reason people don't think that scene is necessary now is because Psycho did that scene. Yeah. Because before Psycho came out, the idea of serial killers with multiple personalities, this was not something that was typically discussed in cinema. These were issues that made people really uncomfortable. And so having this laid out so clearly and concisely by someone in a position of authority, a psychologist, it stops the movie dead. There's no denying that. But it is an attempt to make sure that the audience understands what they just saw, because without that, they might have no idea what happened.
Well, that was the thing for me. The thing for me was that I always picture myself watching this movie as it came out. You know, again, the review of Mother, the slashing, the shower scene, and it being the 60s, and you haven't really seen anything like this. I can only imagine when I basically spoon feeding you what happened with Norman. I can imagine in people's minds going like, what the hell is this? Because this has never been, at least to my acknowledgement, like this was never has been mentioned, or nothing like this was talked about, at least back then. So
yeah, sorry, I didn't interrupt. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I was pretty much done.
Okay, no, because I was going to go on a slightly different tangent. I want to make sure you could finish, but here's the thing: like, all of that is really significant, and it's really important to remember when you watch an older movie, especially a significantly older movie, that the context in which that movie came out might explain things that seem a little baffling today. Like, if you saw this movie for the first time, it was made today. That whole scene with Simon Oakland. That would not be necessary. That would be a couple of lines and we just move on. And we'd all be like, oh, yeah, I've seen movies. I get it.
Yeah, we get it.
But the problem is that kind of the reason why this scene is also kind of dangerous. And I think Psycho, for all of its genius, does have some stuff to answer for. And I think it's not the only movie of its kind. You look at something like Silence of the Lambs and the way that it keyed into the way that it connected, however intentionally, is a matter of mild debate, but the issue that it raised is I think well documented. It connected in the minds of a lot of audiences the idea of transsexuals with murderer. Yeah. And even though that there's a line in Silence of the Lambs where they say, well, this isn't actually typical of that in any given way, that's like one line, and then the rest of the movie you've got a guy who skins people, who is trying to make himself a suit, women. Like, that's so fucked up that it kind of dwarfs whatever you are attempting to do positively by saying, oh, but this isn't that. And Psycho does that too, because ultimately, even though someone says, oh, so Norman Bates is a transvestite, they don't actually spend that much time talking about what's actually positive about this. And indeed, the idea of men dressing up in women's clothing was also something that was not really done outside of like sketch comedy. So having like this movie in which a guy dresses up as a woman and kills people, and having a lot of themes in there about masculinity and people challenging his masculinity and him sort of responding to his sexual urges with violence. That's something that Psycho has unfortunately directly connected in some people to actual like people whose lives have nothing to do with this whatsoever. So I feel like that last scene doesn't do the job it needed to do in order to make Psycho a more positive film in the film canon. That being said, they achieved their plot goal with it.
Yeah.
So you have to take the bad with the good. And I think Psycho has a lot to answer for, and I think it's important to remind ourselves that it introduced people to a lot of things, but it connected the things that had no negativity to them to negativity, and that's not cool. And it never should have been.
It's something that for all films, like no matter how great the film is, if there's something that needs to be acknowledged that's problematic, it's important to bring it up. It's something that needs to be said. Like I heard you guys talk about Hamilton a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, that stage play is brilliant, but there are some things that we do need to look at to have a conversation about. So I completely understand having that moment. Let's transition into best line. I went with more of a scene that I really enjoy, that I think it's overlooked, and it's with Marion and the car dealer. And
that's a great scene.
I love that scene, but the car dealer says something that I feel like kind of is a reflection on people today, which is, she's in a rush. She's trying to get out of there, just answering any questions. And he gives her the price, and she's like hesitant. And he says, "You always got time to argue money." I love that moment because it is, no matter how much of a rush we're in or what we're trying to get to, wherever our goals are, if money's involved, we do pause for a second.
Yeah. Look what she's doing. She's doing this for money. She thinks money is going to solve her problems. And I think he says it costs like $700, which actually seems like a lot. And it's probably not a good deal. And so she's acknowledging, oh, he sees him in a hurry and he's trying to screw me over. But also that cop is right there.
That cop is right there.
It's like 1/40th of the money that I stole. It's really worth the investment. And okay, fine. Let's just get the damn car. Yeah. No, it's a good pick. I like that. That's I would not have expected anyone to pick that. That's a good line.
Jader, what's your line, man?
I went with the obvious, and it's it's more a love that I had to the first horror movie that I fell in love with, and knowing where the influences came from. It's we all go to a little mad sometimes.
Yeah,
I absolutely love that scene, and then kind of reflecting back on what Bib said with the scene where he doesn't really snap, where Marion tells him to put her in a home, and he goes, Coño, bro. Now I'm stuck. The mother's best friend.
A boy's best friend.
A boy's best friend is his mother.
Yeah.
That's another line.
How many friends? A boy's best friend is his mother. Yeah.
Yeah, those are probably my two favorite lines in the whole film. But I'm gonna go with the obvious, with the we all go a little mad sometimes.
Yeah, a boy's best friend is his mother, I think, is one of the many iconic lines that we've gotten from Psycho, and it's probably my pick for number one. There's a comparable line which is just sort of just shiver-inducing once you know what's going on in the movie, where he talks about it's the same scene actually. He's talking about the relationships he has with his mom and with other people, and he also says, in regards to his mom, when she actually met another man and they decided to start this motel, and he says, "A son is a poor substitute for a lover," and you're like, oh, there's so much to unpack there.
Yeah.
Creepy.
I had one more written down here. I had from Norman Bates too, says, I think I must have one of those faces you can't help believing. That's a little foreshadowing right there too. That's another.
Yeah.
That's why they cast him, because if he looks like Peter Lorre, if he looked like a creepy guy, you would go, oh, he's a creepy guy. He'll probably do something creepy. Yeah. But it's that nice kid from those movies that we liked. I think he'd already been Oscar nominated before, wasn't he? In Friendly Persuasion.
I know he had one nomination to his name, but I don't remember.
It wasn't this, which is nuts.
Which should have been, yeah, which is nuts. His nomination, where the hell is it? Because I read this. It was Friendly Persuasions. Yeah,
it was.
You were absolutely right.
Before Psycho, though, it was 4 years before Psycho.
Yeah,
so he was already a respected, likable, people liked him actor. He'd worked with Orson Welles already in a movie based on Kafka's The Trial, which is actually really good. So yeah, you see him and go, oh, he's nice. I wonder if he's your new love interest.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
No,
shit.
one of the best foreshadowing lines that I love in this film is when the highway patrolman catches Marion, and he's like, "Why don't you just go to a motel to be safe?" Like, because she fell asleep on the side of the road. I thought that was fantastic. I every time I see that line, I smile. Yeah, it's the best. It's the best.
I got a couple casting what ifs here. With these older films, it's hard to see like what the rumors were back then. Who was supposed to be playing this? There's not too many, but I was able to find two circumstances. One was Hitchcock teased the press that Dame Judith Anderson would play Mrs. Bates, which is just how secretive.
That's hilarious.
He held that really close to the chest. The only one I could find though was Kim Stanley was offered the role of Lila, but turned it down due to personal reservations about working with Anthony Perkins. I feel like that's very interesting because I don't know if Perkins had a reputation back then.
I don't know. Maybe was it because of his sexuality?
Possibly.
I don't know. That's weird. I don't know. Honestly, that's the first I heard that one. I don't know that one at all.
Yeah, otherwise that's all I could find. I mean, this film's very perfectly cast to me, especially all your leads. So there's not much I would change about it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't change anything at all about this film, to be completely honest. I absolutely loved it. And you know what's crazy? When we were talking about near perfect films for us or whatever, I don't even know why I didn't think about this. Because I think every time that I watch this film, it's like, again, smile to smile. I'm like, I wouldn't change anything about this. I love this movie.
That was a fun episode.
I think there are clunky bits in this movie, like little tiny things, but it's absolutely riveting. And I think it's important to remember that perfection isn't necessarily a state of not having any flaws whatsoever. Like, perfection is a state of, I don't feel the need to change anything.
Yeah.
Like, that can be fine. So if Psycho is perfect to you, that's totally fair. It is definitely top tier Hitchcock for me. Again, there might be a few minor things I'd change if I could get a crack at the script, but yeah, it's absolutely incredible, especially for its era. So yeah, it's hard to say. Maybe if you did change it, it wouldn't have the lasting impact that it did. Who can say?
It's hard to look back and make those changes, but let's move on. We have the Mahershala Ali Award for Best Sharpshooter. So this is the person in the film who's not in it he's not a lead, or he or she's not a lead, but the little scenes they are in, they leave a huge impact. So let's see. William, let's go with you first on this one. Who do you got for the Mahershala Ali Award for Best Sharpshooter?
The actor in this movie, who I don't think gets nearly enough credit for giving a really great performance, is actually Martin Balsam as Detective Arbogast.
That's my pick.
He's really great.
Is he unanimous?
Yes.
Is it? He's great, and he's not an actor I think most people know about nowadays, but he was a very well-respected character actor in his time, and he shows up halfway through the movie as this detective who's just trying to find Marion Crane, and all of his scenes with Norman Bates, where they're talking completely cross purposes to each other, and Norman is trying to hide something, and he doesn't even know that the guy doesn't. I don't think she's dead. Yeah. I'm actually just trying to find her, and I think maybe you took money, and he doesn't know what money is. Like, it's just incredible to watch Arbogast pick up, because he's a good detective. Actually, he's picking up every single thing that Norman says that doesn't track, and yet he is not. He understands that Norman is a bit fragile. And if he pushes too hard and he gets angry, or where were you on the night of the 14th, that kind of thing, he knows that Norman will probably clam up. Mm-hmm. So what he's doing is he's trying to be as friendly as possible to this guy who obviously doesn't have a lot of friends, social interactions, is very meek. And so even when he catches Norman in an obvious lie, he is trying to keep the polite, friendly conversation going. And it is a really masterful piece of writing, and both him and Perkins are perfect in it.
Jader, that was your pick too?
Honestly, my pick, yeah, man. I thought he was fantastic. Again, I hadn't seen this movie in a long time, and I probably in my lifetime I maybe seen this movie about 5 times. I haven't seen it very, very too many times. So it's been 2 years since I've seen it, and watching it yesterday. One of my favorite, and I didn't even cross that the interrogation scene with Arbogast and Bates it's fantastic. It's fantastic. And again, it's one of those things where he doesn't even think that she's dead. He's just looking for her. And Bates, obviously knowing that he had just killed her, it was all, you can tell he's a little rattled, but still tries to keep the cool. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. Love it.
Yeah, this was an easy pick to me too, because I feel like he kind of gets forgotten about, like you mentioned earlier, William. Like he's that bridge from the second act to the third act almost. Like he's the one who carries us, and that could easily be somebody without the right actor. He could fall apart pretty quickly, and I think he's brilliant. He's a really good detective, and you're following along like, oh, how's he going to catch Bates? And he gets him in the lie, and it really works. It's really effective writing there. So yeah, I go with him. The Bill Murray Award for Best Cameo. I just went Patricia Hitchcock as Caroline, just because that's his daughter.
She's a good actor. People don't talk about that enough.
Little not there.
She's on a train too. Like
Yeah.
she's actually, I like that. I had Hitchcock because he kind of like invented the director's cameo.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if everyone always knows about this now, but Hitchcock has a cameo in almost every movie he was ever in. And by the time he was in Psycho, he had already been kind of famous for it. So he started putting his cameo earlier and earlier in the movie so that people wouldn't be distracted by looking for him.
Yes.
So he's like right at the front of this one. But I think Patricia Hitchcock's actually a better choice. I'm actually going to switch my choice to that.
Jader, who you got?
She's really wonderful.
Yeah.
I actually had Hitchcock.
There you go.
There it is.
Just kind of like a
choices.
Yeah, no, there isn't, and it kind of goes back to, it's funny that we mentioned, I at least mentioned the Russo brothers with the non-spoiler, just like Hitchcock wanted it, but you have your little Stan Lee moments with Hitchcock, and you're always trying to look out for him, just when you're watching a Marvel film, looking out for Stan Lee, So Hitchcock was actually my pick for that. So yeah.
All right. Next award, the Gary Oldman Everyone Award for Best Overacting. Okay, who do you guys got for this?
This is an interesting one because it's hard to say it's hard to say like what overacting is sometimes in this, because it's easy to label people with big personalities or people playing big personalities as overacting, when in actuality we all know people who are that broad in real life. So it's easy to say like, oh, like at the end maybe Norman Bates is kind of overacting, but for me, the person is like, if you can accuse anyone in this movie of overacting, I actually think it's Simon Oakland, who plays the psychologist at the end, because they gave him this dense
monologue.
Boring monologue that's just, well, actually, there are two parts of the human brain and they're in conflict with each other. And Oakland is doing everything he can to get that interesting. He's like snapping at people and like, yeah, that's it. And yeah, actually he killed all those people. And you're just like, Jesus, Simon, scale it back a little. You're a professional psychologist. And it's interesting because I've seen Simon Oakland in a lot of things. He's one of those actors who popped up in everything. And on our we have a podcast called Cancel Too Soon, where we review failed TV shows. And if you're watching any TV show from the 70s, whether it was on for one episode or 100, Simon Oakland will be on it. Like he's definitely a star. Like he's just everywhere. So
he's like today's Rob Lowe.
Yeah, he's very like reliable, but he's not as big as he is. And it's just, he just comes in and they kind of just give him the end of the movie and he decides to choose some scenery. I can't blame him. I don't know what I'd do with that material, but I think it's funny that he's just sort of like this like pop psychologist. He's like really trying to sell you on the ideas. And I think it's funny.
We like to say that this award is not a bad thing. It's 80% praise to 20% insult in a way. This is a fun award. I actually went with Frank Albertson as Tom Cassidy for a very specific line, is where he goes, "Lowry, I'm dying of thirst-a-rooney." I'm like, okay, then he's hammering it up.
Okay, that's actually really good pick.
Yeah, see, I didn't even think about. I don't have one, to be honest.
You don't have one?
I thought no, man. That's the one thing that I couldn't fill out, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna fill one out.
I almost put down Norman Bates as his mother.
Yeah.
Not Anthony Perkins. Norman Bates.
That would have worked, man. That would have worked.
Actually, like, he's a little over the top sometimes, but whatever. He's being honest with himself.
Yeah,
so to speak.
Let's get into some interesting details I have here. We kind of mentioned quite a bit of them as we've gone along in this conversation. Some we haven't talked about much is Bernard Herrmann, and interesting enough, in the shower sequence, That was originally supposed to be silent. And then Bernard Herrmann went ahead and scored it anyways. Hitchcock heard it and immediately changed his mind and said, yep, we're putting that in there. And the rest is history on that.
He didn't just change his mind. He doubled Bernard Herrmann's salary because he said the movie would not be scary without Bernard Herrmann.
I mean, I don't want to get into spoiler territory, so we'll talk about Bernard Herrmann in a bit. So
okay.
But what category are we doing now?
Well, I'm just going over some interesting details I got in here.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, but yeah, that was one I had. Bibbs was he doubled his salary right away, which is insane that he loved it so much that he did that. I said the first day of shooting, he made them all swear. Here's one. William, you'll love this. Walt Disney refused to allow Hitchcock to film at Disneyland because he made, quote, that disgusting movie Psycho.
What I want to know is what Hitchcock wanted to film at Disneyland.
Yeah.
Because he might have just been like an opening for like one of his Alfred Hitchcock Presents shows. But a part of me is just like, oh my God, what kind of suspenseful stuff could Hitchcock have done with Disneyland as a backdrop? That was the amazing movie ever. I would love to have seen that movie. Yeah, I love that bit of trivia. That one's weird. Let's see. There was a bit of controversy over, I think, the opening scene, if memory serves, and the production and the studio, or the production code, wanted them to reshoot it.
Mm-hmm.
But they said, "We'll reshoot it, and you can be on set and you can do all this stuff." And they called their bluff because they didn't show up for the reshoot, so they didn't bother reshooting anything, and they just left it all in. Some little novel things. I think these things are well known now, but it was shot in black and white, and the idea of using red dye for blood
didn't work.
It didn't work. It wasn't necessary. So you used chocolate syrup because it was thicker.
Chocolate syrup,
on camera. The sound of the knife was a knife going into a melon.
I read that.
Actually, I thought it was a melon, and I dug deep, and it's a cassava. Is that if I'm not?
Cassava is a kind of melon.
Yeah. I know, but they were. Oh no, that's what it was. They were like, "What type of?" Not my sister, since I'm studying for the Showdown, she's like, "What type of melon did he use?" And I'm like, "What the hell are you talking about?"
I don't think you can't learn that from watching the movie. You could totally.
Yeah, exactly. But she asked me, and I was like, "It's in my head now. It's because I know." And funny enough, she asked me this 2 nights ago. Yeah. Before I didn't even tell her that I was reviewing the film, and she asked me that question. So yesterday, when I saw the movie and I heard the, I was like, "Oh, cassava."
I got one more for you guys here.
Yeah.
So Paramount gave Hitchcock a very small budget because of their distaste for the source material and deferred most of the box office take to Hitchcock because they thought it would fail. And then he made a fortune because the film made $32 million domestic and $50 million worldwide, which that's a ton of money.
It was actually, I think it was Hitchcock's biggest earner overall, which is something. He made blockbusters, and it was one of his cheapest movies, and I think he ended up getting 60% of the take.
Yeah, he made a shitload of money, and it's kind of like Lucas with the marketing thing, where they didn't trust that Star Wars is gonna be as big as it is. Yeah, it's
James Cameron
fantastic.
had a similar deal with Titanic. That movie was going so far over budget. James Cameron ended up saying, if memory serves, you only have to pay me for the screenplay. I'll just take my money off the back end. And the studios, which are up to their eyeballs and receipts, oh God, we're never making our money back. Give him all the profit. I don't care. And they're like, crap.
Yeah, exactly.
Because with the Marvel films, he gets points on the back end. He ended up making $75 million for the last Avengers film, which is crazy. So
absolutely nuts. Absolutely nuts.
Insane.
All right, I got a couple Showdown questions for you guys based on this film. If you guys,
do
we have to buzz? What do we do? We need a piece of paper.
Do you have paper in front of you?
I get a piece of paper. Yeah, I can do this.
All right,
I got it.
All right, you should probably get these pretty good, Bibbs, because I know it's one of your favorite films. But let's see what happens.
Thanks. Thanks, dude.
Jader.
Hey, we got to no matter what.
All right, first question: how many vacancies are in the hotel? Okay.
We're showing all three. Or are we answering now? What are we doing?
Let's do it right now. All right, let's see your answers. Jader, what do you got?
You got 12.
Well, that's correct. William?
Yeah.
12 rooms, 12 vacancies.
12 vacancies.
All
yes,
right,
sir.
Now, in addition to that question, what cabin does Marion Crane stay in?
Okay.
All right, and Williams, go with you.
The one with the peephole in it, number 1.
That's correct.
Norman, you creep.
Number 1.
Exactly. This one we kind of already answered, but we can say how much money does Marion take?
Okay.
That was pretty easy. All right, let's do a 3, 2, 1. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Reveal.
$40,000.
$40,000.
That's one of the things they changed in Gus Van Zant's version because it's not really worth throwing your life away for $40,000. They just added a zero to it, so it's $400,000 in the remake.
I haven't seen that movie since it released in theaters because I was so pissed off about
I think that movie is more interesting than people give it credit for.
I'm gonna rewatch it because I'm like I haven't seen it in a while, and I want to see if my take is different now. Obviously,
my feeling is this: not every experiment has to work in order to be valid, and I think the idea of Gus Van Sant's Psycho is filmmaking math. Can we just take good actors and the exact same shots and just copy a movie, and like anyone could have made this movie if they had the right tools? And the movie proves no. You can't. And I think that's valuable, even if the movie itself isn't as good as the original Psycho, and it's not.
All right, I got 2 more for you guys.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's do it a little easier one. All right. What does Norman say Marion eats like?
Ooh. You got me, bro.
Think about it. You'll kick yourself when you don't know.
Probably.
Because it's everywhere. All right, William. All right, 3, 2, 1. Let's see it. Bird, yeah.
That's what I thought.
Bird.
I threw a little bird.
And it's all over the room.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
All right, final one.
Yeah.
Norman Bates nibbles on a certain food throughout the film. What is that food?
That is not allowable in the Showdown because they never say that on camera, but it is fun trivia.
It is fun. Yeah. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Candy corn.
Yeah. Perfect Halloween candy.
All right. Let's get
I'm sorry. I like candy corn. I will have no candy corn slander. Everyone's like, ew, candy corn. Candy corn is amazing.
I'll stay quiet.
Okay.
I like candy corn for like the first 10 or 15. Then it gets old.
Dude.
You're not supposed to eat a whole bag. You're supposed to have a handful and then move on with your night.
Yeah.
All right. 2 more categories. Apex Mountain. So this can go to multiple. These are multiple people. You can
Kyle. I went toe to toe with the beast.
I got to go toe to toe with Jader. That's great.
Yeah, let me tell you, dude. As soon as that horror league, if it does happen, I cannot wait. I wanted to jump on that Patreon so bad.
No, you got to remember though. Got to call it a division though. Christian hates it when you call them leagues. The whole thing.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
The horror division. Though, I'm really hoping we get that.
Going. I love that Andrejko actually posts that, and then Harloff immediately put division, like immediately.
He's such a pet peeve for him. It's hilarious. But yeah, I seriously hope we have a horror division soon. That'd be.
I really want one, and I feel like a lot of the guys can be great at it.
There's also a lot of people from our community we can bring in too that aren't already part of it who would be like more interested because horror is its own level of geekery.
Again, I mean, you went against them, but having Chelsea and James on that was fantastic. I don't know if you
really nice.
I don't know if you've seen their channel, man, but it's fantastic, man. And I fell through the YouTube rabbit hole watching Freddy Krueger's best kills or something like that. And I ran into his channel that way. And I'm an actual Patreon to James's channel because he's fantastic. So when I saw that happen, I immediately wrote to Harloff. I'm like, make this happen, please. I need a horror league. But all right. So Apex Mountain, what else? What are we talking about?
So yeah, this can go to multiple people. Apex is the height of this person's career. This is the best they ever got, and it's not like it doesn't have to be their best movie, but maybe like their most notoriety. This is where they were at the peak of their powers in their careers. I think there's definitely multiple options for this. You can go with the 2 main actors, and Anthony Perkins and Janet Leigh. I think this is what they're most known for. But then I think we have to have conversations about Alfred Hitchcock and Bernard Herrmann. So how do you guys feel about this?
I think Anthony Perkins is the obvious choice. Anthony Perkins got really typecast after this, and it kind of hurt his career, and that's unfortunate. But he got typecast because he played one of the ultimate movie roles.
Yes,
and I don't know if you've seen any of the sequels to Psycho, but he returned to it multiple times, and he was good.
Was he in all? Was he in 3 or 4 of them?
He was in 2, 3, and 4, and I think he directed 3. If memory serves.
Oh, wow.
I think only 3. And 4 is really good. Like 4 is like legitimately a really good. It's a prequel, and Henry Thomas from E.T. plays young Norman Bates, and he's amazing in it. And that's a really underappreciated film. I think that film is a worthy follow up. And the others are 2 is okay, a little contrived, and I actually haven't seen all of 3, so I can't judge it too hard. Okay. But in any case,
I feel that way about certain horror films too. Exorcist 3 is one of my favorites.
Oh, great!
I think Exorcist 3 is great, and very underrated. But I haven't seen. I can't lie. I haven't seen Psychos 2, 3, or 4. To be completely honest with you, I just stuck with the first. But I'll definitely watch them.
Yeah, this is Anthony Perkins' like biggest, greatest achievement as an actor, and I think it's something to be proud of, whether or not it actually like hindered him in his roles. And when it comes to everyone else, like it's hard for me to say this is like Hitchcock at his best, because Hitchcock was at his best for about 25, 30 years. Mm-hmm. And same thing with Bernard Herrmann, although I probably, if I could pick one other person, I would probably say Bernard Herrmann, because not only was his score for this transcendent, it was also really novel. He used only string instruments, which was really unusual for the time, but he had the freedom to do it, and he made it instantly iconic. When it comes to Janet Leigh, I mean, Janet Leigh was in other like great roles in movies. Like she was in Bye Bye Birdie. She was in The Manchurian Candidate. So I don't know if necessarily this is her apex, but if there's Touch of Evil as well. Okay. There's definitely a convincing argument to be made, but I'm not sure it's the headshot argument that you could make for Anthony Perkins and arguably Bernard Herrmann.
So this is where I go with Herrmann. When you think about horror scores, like what are the most iconic horror scores of all time? I think there's 3. You go with Jaws, you go with Halloween, and I think you go with Psycho. And I think those are right. I think those are the. I mean, can you guys think of
maybe The Exorcist, The Tubular Bells?
Okay.
But what all those things have in common is a certain musical simplicity. You know, they're very they're repetitive. You know, like you hear the same strains over and over again, and they stick in your mind, and they become associated not just with the film but with intensity. And they're very, very different. You know, one of them is about looming dread. One of them is about piercing a veil. Another one is very tinkly and actually just kind of like in the background.
Which I found out
effective. Yeah.
I found out that wasn't in the original cut of the film.
Oh,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, like after that, John.
Yeah, he screened it for certain people, and they're like, "You need something's missing in this film," and he ended up going home and creating that, which is fantastic.
Carpenter said he would never screen a movie without a score again, because a score it's the inflection of the film. Like it's what tells you like how to feel. I know, and the other score I think actually might deserve mention, which also is very, very similar, is Goblin's score for Suspiria.
Yes, absolutely. I agree 1,000% on that.
But the fact that Herrmann's in that conversation, I feel like, what is his best score? I don't know. He did so many incredible scores. He really did.
People forget that sometimes. Yeah, he was amazing.
And it wasn't Taxi Driver his final score?
I believe it was. Yeah.
Yeah. So he had such a long historic career working with so many great directors. I don't know, Jader, who do you got for this?
I got Perkins. I had 2, which is funny, which is the people we're mentioning. That's why I showed you, because you mentioned Bernard Herrmann earlier, but he's not the one that's going to win this award. Anthony Perkins is definitely his apex mountain. Yeah. I think it's the obvious answer. I don't want to say the only answer, because again, we just mentioned Bernard's and Janet Leigh's work. But I feel Perkins, this is what he's known for. Whenever you think of Psycho, the first person you think is Norman Bates, is Anthony Perkins. And his performances it's out of this world. So that's my winner right there.
So what do you guys think about Hitchcock then when it comes to this? Because I feel like when you ask just a normal movie watcher, about Alfred Hitchcock to name a movie that he directed, I feel like this is the one they go to. I think this is the one he's most well known for by average audiences, and that's
if I was on Family Feud, this is what I would pick. Like
that's
exactly.
Yeah.
No, so that's exactly it. I'm sorry, Bibbs. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. No, I just think this is he was very prolific and he made a lot of hits and a lot of movies that weren't hits that were also very good, and also a couple of flat out stinkers. Don't see Topaz. You don't have to see Topaz. It's not good. I'm just saying it right now. If you see it, fine, but I warned you. That's all I'm gonna say. That said, Family Plot. Nobody talks about it. Fucking awesome. It's a fucking great movie. But I just feel like when it comes to Hitchcock, you'll probably say Psycho. You might say The Birds or Vertigo or Rear Window, but it's so hard to say. I don't think that someone's best work is necessarily their most well-known work, and I think I think it sort of it helps like over time when you realize what sort of movies, stories, what have you, made a lasting impact on the popular culture. But there's a difference between what makes a lasting impact and what is actually their most refined work. And that's very subjective, but it's a conversation that we're having right now. And so I would say that Hitchcock's best work is probably either Shadow of a Doubt or Rear Window. Yeah. Those would be his two. I think both of those movies are perfect. Just absolutely perfect films. Exquisitely written. You can pour over every single shot and line of dialogue and performance. I know, pick out new nuances every single time. Psycho, on the other hand, for all of its kind of klutziness, I think in some ways, it's such a sucker punch of a movie that you just can't deny it. So I wouldn't fight it, but it wouldn't be my apex thing.
Yeah, I think it's like more of a conversation to me. And I think his apex really is that 4-movie stretch that I brought up earlier, from Rear Window all the way to The Birds. And I think that's like, because those are 4 movies that people talk about all the time when it comes to Hitchcock. Those are like, when you want to like put a top 5 most well-known Hitchcock, I think all 4 of those are in there, right?
Yeah.
Jader? Yeah.
So that's exactly what I was going to say. Kind of what Bibbs kind of hit the nail on the head, saying if he was on Family Feud, if you ask the average movie goer or the average movie viewer, what's Hitchcock's best film, I guarantee you 9 out of 10, a lot of them that don't watch films like we do are going to say Psycho. This was the first Hitchcock film that I saw, right? And that's why I have so much love for it. And then I started going back and I saw, To Catch a Thief, Strangers on a Train, Dial M for Murder, North by Northwest. And I started seeing, all these movies, and it ended up being Rear Window being my favorite one. Again, it teeter-totters. Sure. Because there's time where it depends on the day you ask me. If you ask me right now, I'll be like, hey, Psycho's his best film. I love this film. But then I go back.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. At some point when we say things are the best, all we're really doing is saying we recommend them. Please see them.
At the moment. Yeah. And that's the thing.
If it's like our number 2, who cares? See that too.
I actually saw Rear Window probably about 2 weeks ago. Steph hadn't seen, my girlfriend had never seen Rear Window ever. And I told her, hey, look, this Disturbia, basically it's where they got their idea from, Yeah. And every time, and I just saw it recently, and Gene Kelly, she's so great and so mesmerizing. Grace Kelly, I'm sorry, Jesus Christ.
Okay. She was my biggest takeaway from the movie too, which was like the thing that annoys me about it, and it's not like a detriment to the movie. It's more of just like, she's the perfect woman in that film, and he just completely he doesn't appreciate her enough. Yeah. That's my big thing. I'm like, damn, like, look, you got someone perfect. Go, marry her. What are you waiting for?
It's kind of hard to be sympathetic for him, and I think the movie knows that Jimmy Stewart is a piece of crap. Yeah. Like he's not a great person in that movie. He gets maybe a little better, but he's not a great person in that movie. And I think the fact that he can't recognize, and I think it's something that happens in other movies, like Clerks is kind of the same way. You can't recognize that you have someone in front of you who really cares about you and is the partner that you need right now. And if you can't recognize that, kind of fuck you, I guess. Like that's what's the matter with you?
That's exactly what it is.
That's not a good excuse for it. It's ridiculous.
But so again, it teeter-totters, and for me, that's why I don't give it to I don't give this to Hitchcock as his apex, because I've seen obviously better work. Best work doesn't mean my favorite work, you know, and this is probably one of my favorites of his, but I do recognize that again, that I love Rear Window and North by Northwest and all these other films that he's done prior to that. So that's why Perkins for me is the perfect choice for this category.
Sure.
All right, guys. Final question here. Who won the movie?
For me, it's Bernard Herrmann, man. That's my pick for me, man. And it obviously has to do with the score. When you think Psycho, you think the score. I had that ringtone for the longest time when my mom would call me. I promise you. And it would make her laugh and piss her off at the same time. Every time she would call me, like I'm inside the house and you're like it just, you know.
That must have been really jarring though. Did you ever have like a stressful day and that's the last thing you needed?
Yeah, exactly. But again, I was also younger, you know. I was in my mid-teens when I had that as her ringtone. But for me, that's who wins this film. You mentioned it as one of the top scores of all time, horror wise. Even you don't even have to even categorize it under just horror.
No, I've been in the top 10 of any list of the best scores.
Yeah, it's easy. So yeah, that's my pick, man. That was and again, I was teeter-tottering between giving him the apex or who won the movie, and I feel like he's the one. He won the movie. That it's iconic. It's iconic.
Who do you got, Bibbs?
I'm going to cheat here because I think who won the movie is the horror genre. I think the actual genre itself. Horror movies have always been successful. People who tell you that horror movies are a big deal now always were, but they weren't always blockbusters and they weren't always respected. And yeah, horror movies like kept Universal alive in the 30s, but you know they weren't winning Oscars or anything. So Psycho is a film that was not only violent, more violent than anything people had seen for the most part, experimental, daring, and terrifying. And not only was it a huge hit, but it was nominated for a bunch of Academy Awards. Hitchcock was nominated for Best Director. Not Perkins. It was Perkins nominated? No, Perkins wasn't nominated.
It was Janet Leigh.
Cinematography.
Janet Leigh was nominated, but I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. And it got the respect in its time. And its popularity laid the groundwork for a lot of other filmmakers to take that ball and start running with it and start telling stories in ways that we had never seen before. And in some cases that meant, getting more violent, but many filmmakers were actually liberated through the use of violence and actually were able to use violence to tell meaningful stories that they couldn't have told before the success of Psycho. So I think really that the horror genre as a whole is the thing that really benefited the most from Psycho, aside from, of course, fans of Psycho.
Yeah. I think that's definitely fair. You can't think outside the box with this. I would go with Hitchcock. I know that's the obvious choice, but I feel like it's almost like if you want to relate it to sports, it's Jordan winning 3 in a row. Like he was already a winner at this point, and he just added with another championship right here. Just another win for him that when you look back at his legacy, people are going to always talk about it. It made him tons of money, like we brought up before. So he clearly was a winner in that aspect. And he really, like you said, Bibbs, he changed the genre. He really took it in another direction. So that's who I go with for this award. But that's going to do it for this episode, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. We had a lot of activity in the chat today. Bibbs, thank you for joining us, man.
Thank you so much, Bibbs.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. It's been a fun conversation. Seriously, I'm grateful for the opportunity to join you here. This has been really nice.
Is there anything?
Thanks, man.
I know you got a lot of podcasts out there.
There's so many podcasts. There's so many podcasts, you guys. Okay, so if you're unfamiliar with me, I do podcasts on the critically acclaimed network. I've been a film critic at various other places, but everything's furloughed right now because it's 2020 and we're in hell. But what I'm doing right now is mostly podcasts. I have a critically acclaimed network, which is a whole network of podcasts on iTunes and Stitcher and wherever you find podcasts. Myself and my co-host Whitney Seibold, we have multiple shows on that channel. There's Critically Acclaimed, where we review new movies. We've got Mail, where we answer mail. We've got Episode 0, where we talk about the films that inspired Star Wars, the prehistory of Star Wars, if you will, the Episode 0. We have Canceled Too Soon, where we review TV shows that lasted only one season or less. So the greatest failures in TV history, which is most of TV history.
Most of it. I was going to say like a lot of it, right?
Yeah, most TV shows fail. That's just the truth. For everyone that's a hit, there are dozens that never make it past a pilot or past their first season. So we'll never run out of material. We also have a Patreon, patreon.com/critically acclaimed network. And over there, we have a lot of bonus content. We have a podcast called All Our Yesterdays, where we're reviewing every single film ever nominated. I'm sorry, no, I'm getting mixed up. All Our Yesterdays is the Star Trek podcast. We're doing every single Star Trek episode and movie in production order, one a week. We're about halfway through the first series right now, and that's going to take us like 10 years to get through.
Yeah, I was like, that's a lot of work, dude.
Series, like that's another one we might never get through, but it's fun to try. We've got Only the Best, where we review every single film ever nominated for Best Picture, which is a big ordeal, and we're about to get started on 1939, which is another time when they had 10 nominees, so that's going to be a big one. We got that.
Every picture nominated. You said, nominated. Right? Wow.
Only one Best Picture nominee has been lost, as in you cannot watch it. It doesn't exist anymore. I think it was the second year nominated. It was the last silent film nominated for Best Picture. It was a film, I believe, called The Patriot, and that is gone. That's just gone now. A little bit of footage was recycled for crowd scenes in a later movie, but that's it.
Wow.
So, everything else is either readily available or kind of available if you know where to look. There's a couple of films that are only available at the UCLA archive, which fortunately I live in LA. I can go up the street and ask them to see it, and so that was possible.
I wish if we were so lucky, Bibbs. If we were only so lucky.
I'm very lucky. I know I'm lucky. But so that's been really, really cool, and we're gradually working our way forward there. We have a show called Not on Disney Plus, where we talk about all of the Disney like movies and TV movies and miniseries that should be on Disney Plus, but mysteriously are not, and we don't know. Okay. We do commentary tracks. We do like hangouts like this, but with all of our listeners, and it's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, dude. Holy shit. I didn't even know. I knew about like three of your podcasts.
Oh yeah, and there's a few I didn't even mention, but I'm very tired.
I was about to say it's all good. Iron List. That's another one I look forward to.
Yeah, that's a monthly podcast where we do a big top 10 list every single month as selected by our patrons. We have a lot of polls on our Patreon where people get to pick future content. So yeah,
incredible.
When we can.
Well, I want to be like you when I grow up, Bibbs.
Same, dude. Seriously, same. I am no one to emulate, but I'm very grateful. That's a very nice compliment. Thank you.
Well, you're always welcome here, Bibbs. If you ever want to come back on, please let us know. Let Whitney know, because we'd love to talk to Whitney.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure he'd be happy to. It's all a matter of scheduling, though. You know, he has family and other work as well. And it's hard sometimes to.
We usually try to accommodate our guests. So whenever you can, if you tell me you want to do it on a Tuesday, we'll do our show on a Tuesday, man.
Well, I appreciate
it. It is what it is.
Okay. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm sure Whitney would be happy to too, though. Just give him a ring.
Perfect.
Ring. What is this? The 80s? Like, give him a text.
Dial on my voting phone.
And of course, I'm at William Bibbiani on Twitter. There you go.
There you go. He's down there.
We had a great show today. Thank you all again for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the Jader